this book is full of philosophy and spirituality and stuff like that. And the thing that I just realized was that nearly always your most disappointing disappointments will become your greatest blessings, right? So you know how disappointed I must have been when I didn't own the company. But here I am 3 or 4 months later and thinking, shit, I'm making all this money. I'm not working. I'm having a blast out there with all my friends. And let's fast forward. The next year, I started getting sales reps in different parts of the country. And the next year more, I built it up to 30 sales reps. And,
Wow.
And so I was, I'd go to Denver and I'd say, okay, I want your 10 best customers. And so I'd arrive in Denver for 2 days and we'd do 5 customers a day. And so I was meeting 30 times 10, 300 retailers a year.
Wow.
Right. And I was in the store and I was helping to sell and we became real good. Like if I was in Idaho, I'd go fishing with the guy, or in somewhere else, I'd go hunting, and it was just like a dream life. And, and I was making literally $100,000 in commissions, which back then was ridiculous. Right.
That's amazing.
And so, it was just one of those things where from the depths of depression, I end up with this incredibly good life. Of just having fun.
Having fun, yeah.
Back on the spirituality, since I mentioned it, I should go into that. Remember I talked several times, I got goosebumps?
Yeah.
Well, to me, goosebumps, like God's not out there at the end of the universe somewhere, right? I just have come to feel and know that there's a spark of God in every single one of us. It's in you, it's in every one of your listeners. And it has some sort of a direction it wants to take us in our lives, and every time we make a decision that's in alignment with that purpose, it sends us a message. And the only way it can get to us is through this electrochemical thing we call a body, and it comes out in goosebumps. So I want to challenge everyone who's listening right now. Next time you get the goosebumps, just stop for a second and go, what did I think? What did I just say? What did I just hear? What did I just witness? There'll be something that just happened at that point that is pretty monumental in your life. And if you do listen to it, like I listened to it with Pink Floyd, I listened to it meditating, thinking, shit, all the big things are coming out of California. I listened to it when I was in the depths of depression. And I've continued to do it all my life, right? There'll be some sign that says, go for it, follow it, and you'll be surprised at how many times you will start to change direction if you consciously stop yourself every time you get the goosebumps.
Can you remember the very first time you were aware of what the goosebumps were, that they were guiding you? No,
that developed over years because I've always been interested in religion and philosophy, and that's why I've got so much philosophy in my book, So I didn't realize that's what it was until quite late, but not late, like I was in my 40s or 50s. But no, when it was happening at the time, I just luckily went with it,
Yeah. It's powerful. I believe spirituality and business, it's connected. It's all connected.
Oh, totally. Spirituality and life is connected. I mean, real life, it's not sitting here doing podcasts, and it's not making snowboard gear, and it's not making that's what you do in your life. Right? Your real life is all about love, being friends with people, loving your family. The real life, if I could die, it wouldn't be that I sold UGG was my big thing. Wouldn't be that I played against the All Blacks or against England in rugby. That was like a blip. The things I'll remember is all the people that I've loved.
Powerful. Very powerful. Hi, and welcome to another episode of Unlocked from Within. Today's guest, we have Brian Smith. He's a visionary founder behind UGG, a brand that revolutionized the footwear industry with its iconic sheepskin boots. With an unwavering belief in his product, Brian introduced UGG to the world, creating a cultural phenomenon that redefined comfort and style. His entrepreneurial spirit, coupled with a deep understanding of consumer needs, propelled UGG to become a global billion-dollar brand, making Brian Smith a true pioneer in the fashion world. Not only did he revolutionize the footwear industry, with his iconic sheepskin boots. But Brian is also an international renowned speaker and best-selling author of the book called The Birth of a Brand. Brian has captivated audiences with his inspiring talks on entrepreneurship, innovation, overcoming adversity, setbacks, the power of belief, resilience, and patience. Tune in as we delve into his remarkable career, exploring the trials and triumphs that led to him to become one of the most sought-after speakers in the world. Again, let's go and check it out on Unlocked From Within, and let's welcome Brian Smith today. Hey, Brian, welcome to Unlocked From Within.
Hey, Marty, nice to hear a good Aussie voice again.
Thank you. And thank you for coming on the show and having the time to delve into your story of Birth of a Brand.
All right, let's go.
So, Brian, I'd like to start off, like we first initially, how it all came about for me is I heard your story on another podcast many years ago. I think it was 2019. And I just found it fascinating because one of my brands is the NFPD Snow brand. It's an online apparel brand, and the birthing of it and growing it, and now we're selling in over 12 countries, and it really resonated. Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah, thank you. And it really resonated, your story, with what I loved about it, what you write within your book, whether it was in the book version or the Audible version, which I highly recommend anyone to get. I really think you should get both. And it's something I go back to when I'm dealing with putting out fires and thinking, I think I should just pack it all in. So it gives me
every entrepreneur goes through that phase.
Yeah, so I'd like to delve into the basically the story of Birth of the Brand and the story of UGG.
Okay. Where do you want to start?
Basically, when you were back in Australia and
Okay.
You're an accountant.
Yeah, I grew up in Canberra, and when I left high school, I decided to work for an accounting firm and study in night time, thinking it'd be quicker to do that. But it took 10 years for me to graduate, and by the time I graduated, I quit the same day because I just didn't like it. And I spent a bit of time. I'd moved to Perth by this time, and I was trying to figure out what to do with my life. And the weirdest thing happened. I don't know if any of your audience gets turned on by music, but I one day discovered Pink Floyd, and the sound, the Dark Side of the Moon. It was tired of lying in the sunshine, staying home to watch the rain. You are young and life is long, and there is time to kill today. And I thought, oh shit, they're talking about me, And then one day you find 10 years have got behind you. No one told you when to run. You missed the starting gun. And as soon as I heard those words, I just stopped dead with goosebumps. And I thought, oh my God, all my friends are tracking off to partnerships in the accounting world, and other friends who started their businesses out of high school were doing great. And I'd been running on the spot as an accountant for 10 years. And so I was doing some meditation. I'd sort of learned yoga at that time. This is about 45 years ago now. And I was meditating. That just happened to come after yoga, And I had this goosebump moment again when I thought, oh my God, all the biggest brands are coming out of California. So I decided I was going to go to California and find the next big thing and bring it back to Australia. And so I arrived there pretty quickly and rented a little house in Santa Monica, which is in Los Angeles. And I had my surfboard and I leased a van. And the first thing I did was drive up to Malibu and go surfing because I'd been reading Surfman magazine for all my life. And Malibu was like the Mecca, And so I spent a month, 2 months, 3 months just surfing at Malibu and, reading the newspapers and looking at billboards and trying to find the next big thing, and nothing, And then it got to be October and the wind was getting chilly and the water was getting cold. And I remember finishing up surfing one afternoon and I was pulling on my UGG boots that I'd brought from Australia, and I just got these goosebumps again. I went, oh my God, there are no sheepskin boots in America. And back then, one in one in every two Australians had some sort of sheepskin footwear. So that was when I got my goosebump aha moment, and I looked at my buddy Doug and I said, "Hey man, we got to go into business. We got to be instant millionaires." Right? And any entrepreneur who's started a business has had that feeling, and then it doesn't turn out that way. And after I sold the company and I wrote the book you were talking about, it's called The Birth of a Brand, and the theme of the book is that you can't give birth to adults. And this is what I learned after 20, 30 years of trying to start businesses, right? You have to conceive the idea first and then take the first action. So me buying 6 pairs of samples from a manufacturer in Australia was like the birth of UGG. And then it just goes, you think you're going to make millions of dollars and it just goes into this infancy and it just lies there. And it lies there and it lies there, and you got to keep feeding it and, changing diapers and all that. But, eventually if you can wait that period out, it'll start toddling, which is when, the first customers are buying your product and they're talking it up, and magazines are writing articles about you, and all your friends and their friends are starting to talk about it. And so you start getting this traction as a toddler, and that quickly goes into the youth phase where you've got, and this is the best phase of all, you've got production's working, sales and marketing's working, administration's working, warehouse and shipping is working. And you can run a $20, $30 million company in that youth phase. But if it's a really great product or a really great service, you're going to get drawn into the teenage years. And you can remember as a teenager, you want to be in every party on a Saturday night. Well, it's the same in business. You want to be in every major trade show and you want to be in every mass retailer, and you can just kill yourself so fast if you go too quickly during that phase. So eventually, the business sort of matures and all the controls come in and it becomes a big business. But, you could look at, any company on the stock exchange page of the New York Times, every one of those companies has gone through this same phase.
And do you think, looking back, because you came from an accounting side, which is service-based business,
right?
Then going into a product-based business, do you think the product-based business is a lot more harder because there's so many more overheads as to a set, to get it off the ground from birthing the business?
Yeah, I had no idea at the time that was the case. I was so naive, and that's one of the great attributes every entrepreneur must have, and that's a certain level of ignorance, right? Because if you knew everything that was coming, you wouldn't go into the business. Right. So my ignorance led me into this product-based business, and I had no idea of the cost of inventory and the effect of cash flow and, all these things and marketing expenses you had to put out, and just the grind of being on the, for years and years and years, not knowing if it's ever going to succeed and just trying to keep it together. So yeah, the product-based businesses are difficult because the more successful you get, the harder it gets to, find inventory and money for inventory. And that was one of my biggest downfalls. Even though I was an accountant, I never understood finance. Now you can go online and you can buy a spreadsheet and forecast out what your sales are going to be, and it tells you all the things you have to look out for. Well, that didn't exist. I was, 20 years prior to the internet. And so I had to do everything on these green, paper and pencil schedules or schedules, I should say. Now we're in Australia. and I had to try and figure it all out by myself. So I was really flying blind.
And tell us about that first year, in business, creating UGG. Did you have much money behind you to launch it?
We borrowed $500 to buy the first samples, me and my buddy. But I mean, we knew we were going to be instant millionaires because of how big it was in Australia. So we ordered, we raised 20 grand, which in today's money is about 70,000. So, we didn't think we'd ever need any more money than that. And we bought 500 pairs in, and Doug went on the road first to all the shoe stores, and they just laughed at him and said, you got to be kidding, bringing sheepskin into California, right? Which sounds logical, but Australia's climate's identical to California, so that wasn't the answer. The problem was Americans don't understand sheepskin. They think it's hot and prickly, and you can't get it wet, and it's too delicate. Whereas Australians know how rugged it is and how it insulates, and yet it breathes, and all those great things. So Doug came back with 0 orders after the first month, right? Wow. And so we had to regroup. And as entrepreneurs do, when you hit a wall, you have to figure out a way around or under it or over it or whatever. And so we thought, well, how come all my buddies up at Malibu think this is the best idea in the world? And it struck me that so many of them had been to Australia and bought 4 or 5 pairs of boots back for their buddies. So within the surf community, UGG was pretty well known. And so Doug and I decided, okay, we'll switch gears. We'll try and sell into the surf shops. And we had our samples. We had 2 pairs each. And I remember going into the first surf shop, and I was so scared. I was an accountant, right? I'd never sold anything in my life. And I walked in and I had these little samples, and the owner of the surf shop goes, "Oh man, UGG boots, they're fantastic. What are you doing with those?" I said, "Well, I'm thinking of importing them into America." "Oh my God, you're going to make a fortune. Those are the best things in the world, So I'm thinking, well, sales isn't so bad, right? So I go to the next surf shop and the next surf shop. I worked my way all down the coast from Malibu all the way down to Mexico. And Doug was doing his thing out in the San Fernando Valley and getting the same reaction. And so we met back in my little house in Santa Monica, and we were on fire. We were going to be so rich. And so we raised that 20 grand, sent an order down to Australia for 500 pairs from this manufacturer in Albany in Western Australia. And they finally arrived in December, and Doug and I, sorted them all out, and we filled our vans full of product. And now we had order pads, because we hadn't even asked for an order on that first trip. I mean, we didn't have any inventory then, right? So what's the point? So now we go back, and I go back down to that same first surf shop, and I got a huge bag full of boots, and go, "Okay, John, how many do you want?" And he goes, "Oh, well done, Brian, but we couldn't sell them in this store. We just sell surfboards and trunks and flip-flops, and they're way too expensive for us, but you'll do great in the shoe stores," right? And this happened to me over and over and over, all the way from Malibu, Santa Monica, Newport, Laguna, all the way down to Mexico, San Diego.
How many stores would that have been?
Probably 40 or 50.
Wow.
And Doug had another 30 or 40 up in the valley. And anyway, we got back and we tallied up the orders for the first season, right? And we sold 28 pairs. It just happened to be exactly $1,000. It was a fluke, And that was horribly demoralizing, because I was thinking of like they're going to be like Australians, but they just didn't get it. And so, Doug went and got another job, and I couldn't go out of business because I got 480 pairs left in my third bedroom, and all the investors' money's tied up there. So I started doing swap meets and street fairs, and the best thing I did, I had I filled a van full of product, and I would go surfing at 6 every morning at Malibu. And by 8:30, I've got my coffee and the paper, and I would open up the back of the van, and I'd be open for business. So it was like, in today's terminology, they call that a pop-up store, right? But I did it 45 years ago.
Wow.
And after a week or two, the word of mouth built up all over, Los Angeles, and hey, where'd you get those boots? I mean, there's some guy up in the parking lot at Malibu, So I had people driving from all over LA to Malibu Beach to go buy a pair of UGG boots.
That's awesome.
And that I sold like about $6,000 worth over the next couple of months, and then sort of summer hit. So I had to get a summer job. I was scraping the underneath of boats at Marina del Rey for that first summer.
Was it hard to? to get to that, was it hard to get to that decision to go get a job, or was it like, I'm running out of money, I've got to do something?
I had no alternative. Yeah. And they weren't going to place an order in March because it's the beginning of summer, So that was another horrible thing. Had I known how bad the seasonality would have affected me, I never would have started that. So that ignorance also played into it,
Yeah.
So I decided, okay, I'm going to advertise. So I advertised in the Surfer magazine and Surfing magazine, and the sales that next year went to about $6,000. And I was thinking, shit, it should have been way more than that, And so I got a second summer job. I was doing construction work in Beverly Hills. And so the next year I thought, okay, I'm going to advertise, get better looking models. And what I was doing, I was getting these male and a female model, and I was posing them on the beach at Wind and Sea down here in San Diego, and perfect hair, perfect clothes. And the boots were like the main part of the ad, right? The big focuses, the big, tall, white boots. And the sales that next year went to about, 12, 13,000. And I couldn't figure out. It should have been way, way more than that. But now, I've got 20, 30, 40 surf shops who are all stocking a couple of pairs, not much, but a little bit. And so the next season I decided, I was working on a golf course the next summer, which I really loved. But, during that summer, I realized all the problems with UGG. It was expensive product. Americans didn't get it. It was really hard for me to finance the inventory. And I just decided, I'm going to go out of business. I'm just going to sell off whatever I've got left and get out of it. And then in San Diego, every October, the first storm hits the coast, right? And Californians go, oh, it's winter, right? And so I got home from the golf course this afternoon. I was soaking wet. And there's like 25, 30 messages on my answering machine from all the surf shop retailers. And they go, Brian, we got people in our store all day today wanting UGG boots. It's just crazy. Can I come down and get some more? And so I realized quickly I couldn't even go out of business properly. So I had to put another order in for Australia to turn around real quick, and I got rid of all the product. And this year I decided, well, I want to advertise. If I'm going to stay in business, I got to advertise. But this time I went and had a beer with one of my surf shop owners, buddy Rob, and we were having a beer in his shop after they closed, and I was explaining this advertising thing, and he just goes, oh, shut up, Brian. And he calls out the back to these little 12, 13-year-old grommets, and he says, hey, you guys, what do you think of UGGs? And every one of them, they just went, oh, those UGGs, man, they're so fake. Have you seen those ads? Those models, they can't surf. And like instantly I realized I'm sending the wrong message to my target market. And I was embarrassed when I saw those ads through their eyes, because it was so fake and so posed, and there was no credibility to it. And so again, as an entrepreneur, you pivot. And I called up a guy, Pete Townend, who was an Australian former world surf champion. And he was running this Scholastic Surf Association up in Orange County. And I called him up and said, Pete, do you have any young kids who are going to go pro soon? Because I need to, get some validity to my ads. And he gave me these two guys, Mike Parsons and Ted Robinson. And so instead of hiring an expensive photographer, I just took my little Canon Sure Shot. We went surfing at Black's Beach in La Jolla and Trestles up in San Onofre, which is near Los Angeles. And I just took shots of walking to and from the beach and everything. And I selected a couple of photos from that, and I ran them in October, November, December in the Surfer and Surfing and Action Sports magazines. And the sales went to $220,000. Right?
Wow.
Why?
Wow. Yeah.
Because I'd figured out the secret of advertising and marketing. And it's quite surprising. You never sell your product, right? You sell the features, the benefits, the emotion. The more emotion you can get into your advertising, whether it's online today or print magazines, or doesn't matter, whatever the medium is, you have to want to get the ad. And I could imagine when I ran these ads that every little kid in the country who reads Surfer magazine would just die to be walking down that road to Black's Beach with Mike Parsons or Trestles with Ted Robinson, you know. And that was the beginning of me really, really understanding how to market your product.
Wow, that's powerful. Very powerful.
It's very, very powerful. And it's one of the most critical things in putting your product out there. So, for instance, if you have a software that saves time, you don't have your website full of photos of engineers at their computers and a copy of the software packaging, and you don't do any of that shit. You have some guy in the Bahamas drinking a rum drink with all the time he's saving. Right. So do you see how you don't put the product out there? You put the benefit and what this product will do for you.
Yeah.
And that was the secret. And I was able to take that, and you know, the surf market was now off. You know, if you didn't have a pair of UGG boots at high school in Laguna Beach or in Newport or in Malibu or San Diego, you were just not one of the cool kids. So I really nailed that peer pressure thing. And then I was able to transfer that into snowboarding and skiing. And then back east, I had a bit of a stall because for a couple of years, I didn't know what the kids did back east. You know, they didn't snowboard or surf. And I finally figured out they play ice hockey. And when I looked into that, I was, shit, that market's twice as big as surfing, you know? And so I started going after all the kids' hockey teams in the hockey market. And that was when it finally became a brand that went all across the US. But that evolution took probably 7 or 8 years.
Wow.
So you can't give birth to adults, right?
That's it. And so, like, how many years do you think you were in the infant stage?
I was in the infancy for 3 years until I discovered that advertising.
And how much were you earning yourself once you took out all the overheads in year 2 or year 3 from UGG, even year 1, like pulling out?
Well, year 1, you know, the sales was, let's say, $6,000. In year 2, right, $6,000. And the cost of the product was 50% of that. So you had $3,000. And then the advertising cost another $1,500. So, you know, I didn't really pay myself anything for 5 years.
Yeah. It's like yourself. I've got a similar story where, like, I came from a service-based background selling commercial industrial real estate, selling and leasing. And so it was service-based. And then, I don't know, like one of my passions is snowboarding. And I was like, oh, how can I bring more snowboarding, have more snowboarding trips and whatnot? I'll start a snowboarding brand, apparel brand. And it's got the time and energy in birthing it is taken me away from the time to go snowboarding.
That's like every surf shop owner that I know started a surf shop so they could be in the industry, and they don't surf any, they just stop surfing.
Yeah. And like year 1, year 2, year 3, I'm like, fuck. There's no all this energy I'm putting in, you know, the 14, 15 hour, 17 hour days. And when do I get paid?
That's right. Yeah. Well, if you're lucky and then the brand does hang in there and you keep creative in the new products, you'll have a payday eventually.
Yeah. So I think it's something that a lot of people that are starting out, where they want to start out in a business, needs to hear that it is a lot of work. You know, and
the internet accelerates things quite a bit, especially if it's an internet-based program where you can just send it electronically, you know, and you don't have a cost of inventory. That you can go pretty quickly. You can really accelerate things. But if you're in a product-based business starting out today, you're really going to go through all of that same hassle, you know, developing a following. The hardest thing is to get a good following. Once that's in place, it becomes much, much easier because they're telling their friends, they're reordering, they love your stuff, they can't wait for the new season's gear, you know. But it takes a lot of perseverance just to weather that 3 or 4 year period, getting it up.
How many times did you feel like quitting or giving up in that period?
Oh, several times.
And what was it on that day to day that was it just that feeling you knew UGG was going to be this massive $1 billion brand one day? Or was it like,
every time I was thinking of giving up, I was very lucky because I could remember buying a pair of UGG boots in Australia and thinking how cool they were, and the fact that everybody owned a pair, right? So every time I'd feel like giving up, I'd go, it's not the product, it's me, right? It's never the product, because the product, UGG boots are fantastic, right? It's me. What am I doing wrong? And that would enable me to stick in there for one more season, And my biggest problem, I mentioned earlier, I didn't understand finance, right? Let's say I just finished a $1 million season and I'm broke. And I think, okay, what do I need to do to get money? So I think, simple, I'll sell 2 million next year, right? Well, the next year I sell 2 million and I've got less money and I'm more in debt because I had to find money to get the extra product. I had to get a bigger warehouse to handle it. I had to have staff to do all the shipping. And at the end of the season, I'd sold double the amount and had less money. And so it took me years to break that cycle. And had I known about finance and had somebody that could have helped me, and I didn't even know that existed back then. Now there's groups you can join, YPO, EO. There's like all these peer groups you can join in, and there'll be somebody who's been where you are before, and they can help steer you through all of these issues. But back then I was Robinson Crusoe. I had no idea. And so I had to keep doubling and doubling and doubling till we got to about 8 or 10 million. And I was just more in debt, and I'd have to buy out the original investors and bring in bigger ones, and then I had to buy them out and bring in bigger ones. And so my equity kept getting cut every time I got twice as successful. And there's a point where you just want to say, well, what's the point?
What's the point? Yeah.
Everybody else is making, getting their equity going, and I'm making nothing,
And like through that the infant period, 1 to 3, is that when you met your partner? Like, was she going through the ups and downs of
she was.
She was on the roller coaster?
Luckily, she had a really good job as an assistant to this architectural group. So she paid the rent for 3 or 4 years. And thank God, because I wouldn't have had the determination to keep going. But because she was able to keep, the food on the table, and I was contributing bit by bit, with all the sales I did make. But we had to eke it out for several years.
And she had that, like, she had the belief as well, like, or was she going through those days as well?
No,
Brian, why don't you give it up?
I never told her. She was blissfully ignorant.
Yeah.
Of all the pressure. I mean, I'm sure she saw the pressure in me.
Yeah.
But she didn't know any details. And that I think was the secret, was that she was really happy at her job, and when I was happy, she was happy, and so I didn't tell her any of all of that stuff.
Yeah. That's there would have been a lot of further fires to put out.
Yeah, and she probably, if she'd known how bad it was, she would have convinced me to give up.
Yeah. That's what. And like on that day to day, like when did, like through those years, like how often were you, checking in with yourself to go, meditating or going for a surf?
Quite a bit. There was one instance where I really could have. This is when I maybe should have given up, right? We were doing about 4 million. And again, I told you I had to bring in these new investors. I got these 3 guys, Neil, Paul, and Joe, and they were running a distribution center up in Anaheim. And they came on and they bankrolled me with a couple of containers worth of boots. And the deal was that they were going to run the warehouse and shipping and invoicing and billing and, all of the admin. And I was going to go on the road selling, because by now I was an expert salesman. I just loved, so it wasn't even selling to me. I'd go in and I'd either go surfing or play golf with all the surf shop owners. There's no work involved. It was all play for years. And the deal though was that even though I was full-time on the road working only on commissions, we were going to share the company 25% each, right? But the part of the contract that said that I didn't actually get my stock issued until I finished a trademark lawsuit that I was in with a company called UGHS, another Australian woman. And I knew I was going to win that. So I signed the deal, and, we moved everything up to Anaheim, and I went on the road very first day, after we got everything organized. And I went down to Huntington Surf and Sport, and I walked in, and the guy says, "Hey, Brian, I heard you sold the company." I went, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I called an order in this morning. They said you don't own the company anymore." I said, "You're kidding me. They said that?" And I couldn't wait to get out of there. I went to the Shell gas station next door with, because this is before cell phones, right? And I called up Anaheim and I said, "Neil, what are you telling people? What do you mean?" I said, "You tell them I don't own the company." He says, "Well, you don't. You don't get your stock issued until..." And I just hung up and I drove back to San Diego and I read the contract and I reread the contract and oh, shit, I really don't own the company. And I just went into this huge depression for like 3 days. And I didn't speak to anybody outside the house, just my wife. I couldn't get a thought together for 3 days, because I'd seen myself as the CEO of this huge international company one day, and now I didn't even own it. It was just ridiculous. And so I think it was the third or fourth night, I was lying on my back in the living room, and my wife Laura was on the couch, and the TV show finished, and I clicked the TV off, and I rolled over on my stomach and got up on my hands and knees, and I started crawling towards the bedroom, right? And Laura, who's a really quiet person, just looked at me and goes, "You get up now and walk to bed like a man," And she scared the crap out of me. And like, as I was coming up off the floor, it was like I was coming out of a fog, and I just thought, oh my God, there's so much more to life than this crappy little sheepskin company. And I slept like a baby that night. And the next morning I was Mr. Normal again, back to yoga and meditating, and I was thinking, God, what'll I do? And suddenly I got these goosebumps, and I thought, oh my God, am I going to be an accountant? No. Real estate? No. Business broker? Maybe. And then I thought, I had this flash and the goosebumps. I thought, sales. I've come to love sales. And then I thought, well, what can I sell? And I went, shit, UGG boots. I love the product. I love the way it makes everybody feel. And so I ate humble pie, and I called the guys at Anaheim up. I said, look, I may never own the company, but I want to come back on, and I want to, just get a pair of UGG boots on everybody in America. And I'm happy working on commission. So, we made a deal. Don't tell anybody I sold the company, right? Because then it was just me back on the road. And I was having fun. Like the first month I was out there, I got back and Neil handed me a check, and it's for $5,000. He says, "That's your commissions." And that literally was the first money I actually pulled out of the company.
Wow.
Right.
What year? So what year would that have been?
That would have been the 6th year. We were doing about $4 million. Yeah. And so I went back on the road for another month and came back, and a check for $10,000, and the next month another check for $10,000. And that led me to this philosophy. And by the way, this book is full of philosophy and spirituality and stuff like that. And the thing that I just realized was that nearly always your most disappointing disappointments will become your greatest blessings, right? So how disappointed I must have been when I didn't own the company. But here I am 3 or 4 months later and thinking, shit, I'm making all this money. I'm not working. I'm having a blast out there with all my friends. And let's fast forward. The next year, I started getting sales reps in different parts of the country. And the next year more, I built it up to 30 sales reps. And,
Wow.
and so I was, I'd go to Denver and I'd say, okay, I want your 10 best customers. And so I'd arrive in Denver for 2 days and we'd do 5 customers a day. And so I was meeting 30 times 10, 300 retailers a year.
Wow.
Right. And I was in the store and I was helping to sell and we became real good. Like if I was in Idaho, I'd go fishing with the guy, or in somewhere else, I'd go hunting, and it was just like a dream life. And, and I was making literally $100,000 in commissions, which back then was ridiculous. Right.
That's amazing.
And so, it was just one of those things where from the depths of depression, I end up with this incredibly good life of just having fun.
Having fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Back on the spirituality, since I mentioned it, I should go into that. Remember I talked several times, I got goosebumps?
Yeah.
Well, to me, goosebumps, like God's not out there at the end of the universe somewhere, right? I just have come to feel and know that there's a spark of God in every single one of us. It's in you, it's in every one of your listeners. And it has some sort of a direction it wants to take us in our lives, And every time we make a decision that's in alignment with that purpose, it sends us a message. And the only way it can get to us is through this electrochemical thing we call a body, and it comes out in goosebumps. So I want to challenge everyone who's listening right now. Next time you get the goosebumps, just stop for a second and go, what did I think? What did I just say? What did I just hear? What did I just witness? There'll be something that just happened at that point that is pretty monumental in your life. And if you do listen to it, like I listened to it with Pink Floyd, I listened to it meditating, thinking, shit, all the big things are coming out of California. I listened to it when I was in the depths of depression. And I've continued to do it all my life, right? There'll be some sign that says, go for it, follow it, and you'll be surprised at how many times you will start to change direction if you consciously stop yourself every time you get the goosebumps.
Can you remember the very first time you were aware of what the goosebumps that they were guiding you?
No, that developed over years because I've always been interested in religion and philosophy, and that's why I've got so much philosophy in my book, So I didn't realize that's what it was until quite late, but not late, like I was in my 40s or 50s. But no, when it was happening at the time, I just luckily went with it,
Yeah, it's powerful. I believe. Yeah, I believe spirituality and business, it's connected. It's all connected.
Oh, totally. Spirituality and life is connected. I mean, real life, it's not sitting here doing podcasts, and it's not making snowboard gear, and it's not making that's what you do in your life. Right? Your real life is all about love, being friends with people, loving your family. The real life, if I could die, it wouldn't be that I sold UGG was my big thing. Wouldn't be that I played against the All Blacks or against England in rugby. That was like a blip. The things I'll remember is all the people that I've loved.
Powerful, very powerful.
I think John Lennon and the Beatles did a song like that. Life is everyday love, and what we do to pay the rent is something totally different.
Yeah, definitely. And with, those early days, as you're starting out, you're wearing many hats. So you're doing everything. At what point did you were able to go, okay, I've got to bring some people on, delegate some of the stuff and focus on the things I actually like doing? Yeah. But there's a period you got to suck it up.
That actually happened when I brought those guys in from Anaheim, because I had the attitude, well, shit, they can't do the advertising as good as I can, or they can't do the shipping as good as I can. But at some point you have to go, well, if they do it 80%, we're okay, right? And that's how you start letting go, is that they may not be perfect like I am, but if they get 80% of it right, we're going to survive, right?
Yeah.
So that was a big mental shift for me, to be able to let go. And I'll never forget one time they pulled, the creation of the you got a snowboard company. You know what a kick it is doing the brochures for the new year, right? And you get into every detail and the nuances and the photography and the layout. I mean, it's like having an orgasm, Yeah. And I used to love that. Well, this year they ripped it off me and said, no, you're not doing that this year. And they gave it to this other girl. And a few months went by, and eventually, I was in the office, and Kate walked up to me and she said, hey, Brian, here's, the new brochure. And I looked at it and I felt the paper, and I looked at the colors, I looked at the graphics, I looked at the photography, and I knew I could never have done anything this good, right?
Wow.
And that was the final clincher. Okay, Brian, just let go.
Let it go.
Let it go. Stop thinking you're the only one that's perfect around here. That was a very, very big learning experience.
And was it that battle of letting more of it go? Was there an ongoing battle there?
Yeah, I would say each one was like a little mini grab, a mini grab that you didn't want to let go. But, eventually, the common sense takes over. And if other people can do it better, then let them do it.
Is that sort of like, you could bring back that analogy with, getting into from infant to toddler to teenager, like letting your teenager go into the big wide world?
It's uncannily correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And did you see the business grow a lot more because you were freeing up your space and time?
Yeah, it did. There was something happened in that 3-year period, though, when I was doing all the road work. Neil bought Paul and Joe out. So Neil owned the company 100%. And he finally called me in and said, hey, Brian, I got the lawyers coming in next week. We're going to issue your stock. And we bought company cars and we took out life insurance policies on each other. And I was like in heaven, I was going to finally own my own company. But over the weekend, my wife called me in the car. I had a car phone, with a cord that goes in the car. and she was crying. And she goes, Laura, what's the matter? She goes, oh, Brian, Neil's just died. And he'd been in a motocross race and had a massive heart attack, and they couldn't revive him. And so his wife had never stepped foot inside the business. She had no idea about what was going on. And so I called her up and said, look, I'll come up, tomorrow, and we'll try and figure out what to do. Because this was in late January, and we'd just finished the big season. And I said, look, I'll stick around for a year and no salary. I'll just work on my commissions, and I'll see if I can hold it together. And so that began the longest year of my life. And that was so hard. One part was great, was that I just brought on black and charcoal colors for the line, and the sales reps all over the country were just kicking ass with these new sales, right? Plus the brown and the whites and all that. And the bad part was, though, that I was trying to raise money with a business plan, and the banks are going around, oh, it's a fad, won't be around. I'm going, it's not a fad. It's been 8 years. And look at these. We got millions of dollars worth of orders. Yeah, but fashion's fickle. It'll change. We're not. And so I couldn't bankroll it, the production. And the other thing, my supplier that I'd used all along, he just had 3 or 4 years of really good payments from Neil. And I knew he was going to remember back to when I owned the company, and it wasn't so slick, right? I mean, I always paid him, but we never knew when.
Yeah.
And so he was starting to balk about, was I going to be able to stick around and keep it alive? And so as time went on, the orders were coming in from all the reps, and I bundled 3,000 or 4,000 pairs together and sent them down to the supplier and say, hey, have you started production? He's, well, how are you going to pay me, mate? I was like, don't worry, I'll get the finance. You just keep production, And then, 6 weeks later, I'd send another 10,000 pairs down. Well, I can't find the black and the gray skins, And this was eating up March, April, May, June, and I knew we had to supply in September. So I finally did one clever thing, just thinking laterally again as a entrepreneur, pivoting. Who would benefit from me staying alive? And I had this brilliant flash, like the tanneries. Their business is selling skins, and we're a huge user of skins. So I contacted a couple of tanneries, and there was this one guy, Jackson's Tannery in Geelong, and so I flew down, and he thought it was the best deal in the world. But the first day was go, where we get the skins, what are the colors, how many do you need? And the next day was like, oh shit, it's a lot of money, Brian. I don't think I can take the risk. And the next day was, don't worry, I found a guy in Los Angeles. He'll look after the business. And the next day was, oh man, it's a family company, and I just really can't, take the risk. And so I ended up, not having a supplier. And I got back to LA. It was late July, and my sales rep said, "Hey Brian, there's a company out here selling sheepskin boots, and the company's called Thunderwear." And I looked them up in the magazine, and they're a windsurfing company, and they sell booties and wetsuits. And I go, what the hell are they doing in sheepskin? And I just threw it away. I got bigger problems than a competitor, right? And so I kept trying to raise money and find supplies. And it finally got to the point where it was September, and the big trade show in Long Beach kicks everything off. And my wife and I had to decide, look, we got no product. Do we go and sell more, or do we pull out? And I didn't want anybody to know that I was out of business, right? So we went and put the show together, and when I finished putting up our booth, I found the Thunderwear booth, and they were way back near the toilets, so I walk over there, and I stopped like 2 booths short, and there was all my black product, all the charcoal product, all the natural, all the scent. And the only difference was it had labels that said thugs, like Thunderwear and Uggs, right? Which I thought was a perfect label for them, And that's when I knew I'm out of business, right? There's no coming back. So we did the show. We sold $250,000 worth of product, and I knew we wouldn't ship any of it. And we made it, pulled the booth down and met it back home. And I called Gordon up at the tannery, and I said, hey, listen, Gordon, I just want to thank you for trying to help get this going. But, my supplier's done an end run, and he's teamed up with another distributor. And so, Laura and I just going to shut it down. And we went to bed. He was sad. And then like at 2:00 in the morning, the phone rings, and it's, hello, Brian, it's Gordon. Screw that supplier. I'll get you all the boots you need. And just like that, without a handshake or without a contract, this was just Aussie to Aussie, You got fucked. I'm going to help you out, right?
Yeah, that's so
and so
good.
he cranked up the tannery to maximum production, and I sent the patterns down, and he distributed it to 5 different manufacturers. And after a couple of weeks, we got our first 2,000 pairs. And then every Friday morning from September, October, November, December, every Friday morning, we get 5,000 pairs in. And I'd put 2,500 pairs for all the stores back east. And the other 2,500 was for all the surf shops to fight over. And 5,000 Friday, Saturday gone, empty.
Wow.
Next Friday, 5,000 pairs, Saturday empty. And this went on for 3 months, all the way through December. And then, it got to be, that period between Christmas and New Year in the office. Nobody's there. The phones are dead. Nobody wants deliveries. And it's just like a real peaceful time. And 2 really weird things happened. One was that the life insurance company called up, and they said, well, look, we know you never did the physical, but we want to get this off our books, right, by year end. And so me and a lawyer went up there, and we negotiated several $100,000 to just walk away. And it was just enough money for me to buy his widow out. And so she got full value for all of the assets plus the profits for the year. And had I walked, 9 months earlier, she would have got nothing. It would have been a disaster. So now she's got comfortable retirement. I'm totally broke, but I own 100% of UGG again, right? And the other weird thing was that the customs brokers screwed up and they shipped 4,000 pairs of thugs to me and 2,000 pairs of my UGG boots up to them. You know,
no.
they were like 25 minutes away. So I called the guy up and said, listen, I really need my boots. So I swapped the boots out, and then driving back to San Diego, there's about a 30-mile stretch, which is the Marine base. So it really calms you down because San Diego is so much slower than LA, you know. And while I was driving along there, I was thinking, how come we couldn't keep boots in our warehouse for 24 hours? And the Thugs warehouse, which was bigger than our warehouse, was floor to ceiling full of sheepskin boots with Thugs labels. And that's when I realized the power and the loyalty of my customer base was so strong that they all heard what happened on the grapevine, you know, and they refused to buy the Thugs, even though they were throwing away millions of dollars worth of orders, you know, the product they couldn't, you know, sell. They refused to buy the Thugs and just stuck with me. And that was a tremendous learning thing for me about the power of customer service. You know those 300 shops that I visited 3 times over the course of 3 years, they were all my buddies now. And they weren't going to let someone fuck me, you know. It was amazing how powerful customer loyalty is. And now we got computers and clicks and websites and everything's so fast, and you ship product and you don't care where it goes. You're killing yourself if you don't reach out through the internet and touch base with every single customer, not once, not twice, but 3 or 4 times. And, hey, do you still like your product? Hey, what are you doing? Hey, we got some new colors coming in. And if you can reach out, and I have a girl that I mentor about 6 years now, and she's got a lamb leather crossbody bag, and she reaches out all the time, and she's got people buying for the 4th and 5th times, and the sisterhood of all these bag buyers. It's so powerful. And so it is possible through the internet. And if you're not doing it, you're really killing your future business.
Powerful. So that was a big sign from the universe to tell you you don't have to worry about your competitors as long as you focus on what you're doing and providing that customer service and keeping those relations.
Absolutely. And since you've mentioned that the mantra we had in the company, right? Like, you can't patent an UGG boot. You can't trade, you got a trademark, but you can't nothing's proprietary, right? So we'd have all our new stuff out at a trade show, and we'd see these people coming by with cameras, taking photographs of everything on the tables. And we knew that next year they're going to show up with all of our product that's here this year. So our mantra was, screw the competitors, let's get out front first and then run faster, right? So the next year with the trade show, they'd have all my last year's product out on their tables, and we had a completely new line, new colors, new styles, and they'd come around with their cameras again, but we got out first, and then we ran faster. And that was the secret to anybody in business. You don't rely too much on your patents. You'll kill yourself with legal fees trying to defend a patent. Just be nimble, and just keep coming up with new ideas and new ways to interact with your customers.
Powerful, very powerful. And so at what point did you got it to the point where, you had that, what would you say, the serendipity of the story with when Oprah?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of luck involved in business as well, right? Or I call it karma, because you do good things, usually pretty good things come back, and vice versa, right? I'd been filling these orders for this girl in London for like 4 or 5 years, and she came through every Christmas with a 20-pair order for 20 different people, and it's at the peak of our shipping, which is, and I had to do separate customs invoices it was just a pain in the ass. But it was Trudy Styler, who's the wife of Sting. And so she was like a big fan, and I kept looking after her. So anyway, fast forward a couple of years, 4 or 5 years, and this was the year I was about to sell UGG anyway. And she came up and she called me in from London and said, "Hey, I've just been to a seminar that's changed my world. I need a gift, a perfect gift." And I'm tall, sand, size, whatever. And do you have a pen? Here's where to ship them. And she goes, Oprah, care of Oprah Winfrey.
Wow.
Right? And this is when Oprah was at her absolute peak of popularity. And so I shipped them over there, and she, her office immediately ordered 20 more pairs for the staff. And then I spent the next year or two working with the Oprah organization to help launch that with Oprah, because I knew if I had gone out on the wire and said, "Hey, Oprah just wears UGG boots," we would have got slammed. And you remember, you can't give birth to adults. We were not equipped financially, production-wise, anyway, to handle that sort of volume. So we sort of kept it under wraps and just kept working with their organization. And the new company that I sold to, they had, millions and millions of dollars. They had great production resources. And when they were ready, we announced it on Oprah's favorite things and Oprah's best picks for Christmas. And that's when the brand went worldwide, and it went, went bananas. It was just unbelievable. And that was what took UGG into the billions, and it's been in the 2 billions for 3 or 4 years now.
That's unreal.
And I'm going to segue there, because this is a pattern. Like, I kept getting asked all the time, how do you start $1 billion company? Well, you can't, right? There's so many things. The main thing you have to have, which you can't plan for, is some sort of societal shift, right? So there was a company in Oregon when I started UGG, and they were importing these nylon running shoes, and they were blue ribbons, and they were out in Japan, and they were trying to get into running magazines for 4 or 5 years, getting nowhere, right? And then completely outside of their control, and it was right when they changed their name to Nike, right? The sport of jogging takes off worldwide. And everybody goes, "Well, what's a good running shoe?" And they go through all the magazines. "Oh, this Nike's been around, let's buy Nike." So Nike got caught up in this societal shift of jogging, went worldwide into the billions, right? There's another company in Santa Monica, and they'd been nearly 10 years trying to get this little white dance shoe into the market. And they were advertising in cheerleading groups and, dance studios all across the country. And then the sport of aerobics takes off, and that obviously was Reebok, right?
Yeah.
And Reebok, everyone's going, "Well, what's the best dance shoe?" "Well, this Reebok's been around for a while. Let's do that." And so Reebok got into the millions and the hundreds of millions and the billions. And here's the kicker. We've already talked about how bad it was for UGG to get started. Well, I read the book called Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, who was the founder of Nike. And would you believe that the first 5 years sales of UGG was greater than the first 5 years sales of Nike?
That's mental.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
So as bad as we were doing, they were doing worse,
Wow.
But it just highlights, it comes back to that theme. You can't give birth to adults, You just got to, and luckily, the slower you go, the deeper the roots go. And then when you do get big, you don't fall over. If you go too fast, you'll flame out and burn
Building
out.
the foundations right, the right way.
Contacts, suppliers, customers, support media people. It takes years to develop that machine.
Wow. And then from there, at what point did you decide to sell?
When we got that Oprah thing, that's when I sold out. Remember, I had that van in Malibu, right? There was another van a couple of spots up. He was selling these thongs, the pink, yellow, pink neoprene.
Yeah.
We call them flip-flops over here, but he sort of parlayed that. He bought lightning bolt license, and he bought a wetsuit brand license, and eventually he got a brand called Tiva sandals. And when the outdoor market took off in the late 80s, he got sucked into that vortex, and he went, his Teva brand went from like 16 million to 65 million, and he went public on that. And so fast forward, when I'm about to sell UGG, what had happened is the new preseason sales looks like we're going to be 25 million. I knew I couldn't even finance 12 million, right? So that was going to cripple me. And I knew Doug had just taken his company public, and I was on my way to a trade show in Atlanta, Georgia for the big super show, and Doug was there. And a fluke of all flukes, I got into the baggage claim area, and it's humongous, right? And way up the other end, I saw Doug, right? And I got the goosebumps again, and I got, oh my God, it's perfect, because his business died every winter, and our business died every summer. So if you could put them together, you had a really unbeatable, same sales force, same warehouse, it was just
perfect.
And so I walked up, and we saw me coming, we high-fived, and I said, hey Doug, if we're ever going to do it, now's the time, because we joked about selling to each other all the time, And that afternoon we had the accountants talking, and 9 months later I sold the company, and that's when we developed the Oprah thing and then launched it out. So
Amazing.
It was a perfect time for me to sell, because if I had tried to hold on for that year, I would have crippled it. I would not have been able to, get the product.
And that just took it to the next level with UGG.
Yeah, they had the money
internationally.
Yep, they had all the resources to do it.
The infrastructure, everything. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, awesome, amazing story. I think it's one of the amazing stories, and
they're just a few stories, man.
Yeah.
The book's got 40 stories in it.
And after reading the book, which I highly recommend everyone to read and listen to the Audible version. I reckon, looking back, I'd probably do the Audible as the first and then read it. Yeah, but I do believe it's a top 10 business entrepreneur book. I put it in my top 10.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, because it's working its way up the Amazon ratings, and I don't advertise it except for talking about it online like this. I never advertise it, and the word of mouth it's just being passed on and on and on. So
that's amazing.
Thanks for that plug. Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And I guess I just got a couple questions. I guess look on your reflection, who do you think? What's the big takeaway do you want people to take away from reading The Birth of a Brand?
It comes back to life. Remember how I mentioned that your work is just what you do to fill in time, right? This goes in families, it goes in society, it goes in business, right? And it's this little piece of philosophy. The quickest way for a tadpole to become a frog is live every day happily as a tadpole, right? And it sounds sort of trite, but in a year's time, everyone will forget all the other shit we talked about here, but they'll remember the tadpole story. Live every day happily as a tadpole. And you look back every now and again and go, oh my God, look how far I've come. And it's just, your kids will be growing, and, your business will be working, or you'll have, got into new, jobs in the business, and you're rising up through ranks, and you don't even know it at the time. It always looks like a battle when you're looking out front. But every now and again, when you look behind, you'll be able to go, oh my God, look how much we've accomplished.
Amazing. And I know you say, one of the big key things you said in a lot of people that were saying no at first to whether stocking it in their retail stores, you were saying one of the big wins was forcing them or getting them to physically try on the UGG, and that was the biggest game changer.
I fell into that in the fourth year, because I'd had Americans, I'm not going to try them on, they're too hot, they don't know, I'll never wear those. And I had, I'd opened up maybe a couple of dozen surf shops, and there'd be, 4 or 5 pairs on the shelf. And I was in a surf shop one day, and some customer came in. They're looking at them, and they're going. They asked the manager, "Hey, what are these like?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't know. I've never tried them." And right then I realized, oh my God, that's where the breakdown is. And so I developed what I called the 6-pair stocking plan. And I advertised to every surf shop, if you put 6 pairs on the shelf, I'll give the manager a free pair to wear in the store, right?
Yeah.
And everybody took me up on it. And now when customers came in and go, "What are these like?" And they go, "Oh my God, these are the best things in the world. I'm wearing them. These are so cool. You got to." And that was the biggest thing from a marketing and customer acceptance level that I ever did. I mean, I did some big, expensive campaigns over the years, got into snowboard market, a huge trade show presence. But that little thing, a free pair for every manager, was the turning point of the whole UGG business.
Yeah, it was a huge takeaway for me. Just like, I guess anyone that's listening that's got a product or a service is finding a way to get your customer to try it on or experience what you're trying to sell them.
Yeah, so the two things. Remember, you never sell your product. If you can give it to somebody and let them try it and make them feel special for trying it, no obligations. Then if they do like it, they're going to become your salesman, and then they will sell it to their friends. So it's the two things. It's one, don't sell the product, sell the features and benefits and let them experience it. And then the other thing is to, just like the 6-pair stocking plan. Let's just let it run,
Awesome. And if you were to start a business today, like right now, we're dealing with more uncertainty in the world, the interest rates, rent rises, and all global affairs that are going on right now. Like, if you were to start a business right now, what do you think are the keys that you learned from birthing the brand of UGG and creating it into a $1 billion brand?
Yeah, I think that any entrepreneurial endeavor is a must, because the career jobs, they don't exist anymore. You might sign on with a company, but you're only going to be there a year or two until something better comes along. And I don't put that down. That's a really valid way to pay the rent, right? But if you can have an idea where you want to get your own sales process and be in control of your own income, even though it's tiny at first. The weird thing is, like, I'm in my 70s now. I never thought when I was 20, that number didn't exist in my mind, right? So if you start now and be small, eventually after the years pile on, you'll have a big business, right? If you believe in it and you like it. So be an entrepreneur in mindset and always be looking for something, whether it's even buying a house and flipping it, fixing it up and flipping it, little things like that. You may not make a lot of money up front, but by repeating it, you'll figure out how to make more and more income for yourself. So yeah, that's the advice I'd give, is to try and figure out how do you get in control of your income and don't rely on somebody else to make you a paycheck every 2 weeks.
And do you think obviously not burning the bridges and going all in if you've got very minimal capital, but see if you can keep the responsibilities
I did that, but I had a wife who bailed me out.
Yeah.
My take on that is keep your day job as long as possible until it starts to interfere with your entrepreneurial job.
Awesome. Well, again, Brian, it's been an honor to have you on. As I said, it's one of the top 10 books, and it's a book that I go back to when I feel like giving up. I find the inspiration to keep on going another day. So again, a lot of value today. And again, thank you for your time, Brian.
Hey, my pleasure, Marty. Good luck to all of your listeners.
Awesome. Thanks again, Brian.
Enjoy. Yeah. See ya.
Thanks again for listening or watching another episode of Unlocked from Within. If you loved the episode, please like, comment, and subscribe to check out the latest episode. Please share the episode with anyone you think it may help. And if you'd like to learn more about Brian Smith, please check him out on LinkedIn, Brian Smith, UGG Founder, and that's UGG to spell UGG. Instagram, Brian Smith, UGG. Facebook, Brian Smith, UGG. And if you want to download or purchase his book, The Birth of a Brand, you can get it on Amazon in Kindle, audio, or in hard copy. And as I said earlier in the episode, I believe it is one of the top 10 business books. So I highly recommend checking it out. If you'd like to learn more about Brian and his speaking engagements, you can check him out at his website, briansmithspeaker.com. If you'd love to have a one-on-one Unlocked from Within coaching session with myself, then please book at martyclay.com. It's a combination of breathwork, visualization, and a guided meditation all in one session to remove and clear any blocks in your life you may have, and then take you up to the next level in your journey. Again, thanks again for listening to Unlocked from Within.